Koeti hopa, paikem sitran shachuna hanashuta kaistiwa yosa shishawa. I would like to welcome all of you guys. My name is Francis Vigil. I am from the Pueblo of Zia, which is right down the road on the other side of the ridge here. I'm also from Jemez Pueblo and Hickory Apache. And so I'd like to say good morning to all of you guys, but also I'd like to first acknowledge the land that we're on, of course, and that's the Pewaukee Pueblo. And also all of the tribes from here in the northern part of New Mexico, especially this area where the Tewa-speaking tribes are. And of course, some of my ancestors, the Hickory Apache, used to stomp in this area too. So I wanted to first acknowledge that, but I also wanted to say good morning to all of you guys, all of the PhD in culture and language people that are in this room. You guys don't know how much wealth of knowledge that you guys have in your communities and for your communities. And I want to acknowledge that because a lot of times on a monetary scale, in the terms of, well, do you have some of you guys do have degrees, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and some of you guys don't. And some of you guys that have been the holders of that language and that culture, you're some of the most important, intelligent people in this country right now that go largely unvalued. So first of all, I'd want to say, just start with giving you guys all a round of applause for each other. You all hold the key to to sustaining our languages, but more importantly, our culture and our way of life for your communities and for your tribes. And so being from the BIE, a lot of times we view things, and the way that we've done things has been very institutional. And this is a marked shift towards something different. We want to start engaging in collaboration with our tribes, with our community members, with our grandmas, our grandpas, those people who hold the knowledge within our communities. And that's you all. And I'm so glad that you're here today to be at this part of this institute, because it is an important part of what we do and how we do things, and to sustain how we're going to start to live. And more importantly, carry on that gift of our Creator. The gift of our Creator of language, of culture, of the way that we live and we interact with our world. And so as we start to go on, we start to see that those gifts are exemplified in our actions, in our beliefs, our knowledge, our values. And those gifts are also visualized in the way that we do things within our community. Maybe we're farmers. Maybe we have dances. Maybe we have cooking. We have all of these different activities that go on in our communities that start to strengthen and speak to the way of life that we have created for ourselves since time immemorial. And so for my role in the BIE, I'm very blessed to be able to be in this role, to work with people like you in the communities, and specifically work with people in native language, history, and culture. To me, that's the greatest gift to be able to, because I get to work with people just like you that care strongly and deeply about what they do and how they do it, and perpetuating those things for not only their communities, but for those generations to come. And so in this role with the BIE, I've only been in this role for 2 years. It's a brand new role within the BIE, the Education Specialist for Native Language, History, and Culture. And I've been able to visit communities all over the place, to be able to see things that are going on in all these different communities. And one of the outcomes of these visits has been this particular grant that we're talking about, that is going towards working and enabling and building capacity for Native people to build language programs, but to also go towards language immersion. That's the ideal. We know that everybody's in different places with their language programs. We understand that. So that's why grantees like the Indigenous Language Institute are an important part of this work, because they've already established some of these connections within our communities. But they've also been able to work at what are best practices, what are considerations that we should be looking towards as we build our native language programs. And that's something that's very unique, because we don't have a lot of those people in our communities and out there in the United States. This work is very specific. And so we want to start to try and build that capacity and try to build community and tribal equity, but also build that sovereignty and self-determination that we talk about so much, right? We fought for that for such a long time, but how do we engage that? And we want to try and engage it through education, through learning, through the way that we do things in our community. Those are powerful pieces that have lived on, and that knowledge that has been passed on for generations. And those are things that we don't want to lose. And so as we start to go forward, we've also provided these BIE grants. There's 5 different grantees from different regions across the nation. And we've given the opportunity for each of these tribes, and we've tried to network to all of our BIE network tribes, but also tribes outside of that. Tribally controlled schools, Bureau-operated schools, Navajo schools. We've tried to reach out to those schools that may not even be in our networks, that need support. So these are some opportunities that we want to be able to provide as an institution to start to look at how do we collaborate better? How do we build relationships with other communities, with the communities that we work with, and with people like you? So in my work, I've had the honor of working with many communities. And one of the things that I've always looked at, and I do a lot of work with native language programs. And one of the things I do is I provide professional development in building community, just kind of like what the workshops you're going through right now. And one of the things I always ask at the very beginning from a lot of the people that I'm with is I want to know how they learned the language. So if we were in a professional development of mine, one of the things I always do is I ask people, I want you to think about it. Close your eyes, visualize what that's like, and think about all the people who has been involved in your learning of the language. Where did that take place? When did it take place? Why were you learning in that place with those particular people? How was it that you learned? Were you doing things? Were you doing actions? And so I ask people to think about these things, these stories in their heads, that they were their memories. And when I get the answer back, many times these are very deep answers. They connect you to something. And so as we start to go through this work with our languages, remember that these are highly emotional, connected memories and things that you're building for your students. Maybe it's adults in your programs. Whoever it is that you're trying to reach, that these relationships are the most important things that you're going to create as you start to go through this work. And it goes back to the very essence of who we are as Native people, right? It's that sense of community. All of you guys are sitting with groups of people at your tables that you may know. And have you built those intentional relationships with those people? And the people that you are going to start to work with, that you're going to share this knowledge with. And those are the deepest components of this work that we do, is that not only do we teach language, not only do we provide a sense of connection to culture, but we also are building those relationships and strengthening our communities through it. And that's one of the unseen things that we don't think about on a daily basis, is that the work that you do is going to help strengthen your community going forward. And those are some of the most impactful things that we can do, because of all the things that have happened throughout our history as people, all of the impositions, all of the policies, all the assimilative processes, all the things that tried to strip us of our nativeness. Guess what? You guys get to bring that back together. You're the glue of this. So I know that we all understand the importance of our languages. We do. I think all of us in this room probably get that. That there's a certain need and a want and a sense of urgency that comes along with building these language programs that you're so diligently going towards. But the one thing that's the most powerful about this is that you guys are community builders. You guys are doing that as we speak, sitting here together. And so as you guys start to move and share your experience with each other over the next couple of days, you're going to start to see that those relationships become stronger. And even though you may not speak the same language, you guys are going to connect in different ways that's going to be able to support each other. I saw somebody with a Hopi shirt. I'm assuming you guys are from Hopi. The Hopis might be able to help and inform some of the Cherokee stuff. Cherokee might be able to share some of their experiences in their communities with you. All of this is a shared experience. And despite all the differences that we may have in our cultures and the way we do things, the way we embody things, the knowledge, the beliefs, the values, all of those things come together in forums like this because we're speaking one language, and that's the language of our Creator. And they may sound different, they may feel different, but guess what? They all connect us back to that belief system and that sense of spirituality that comes with it. So, one of the things I wanted to finish was that story. So when I would convene people and have these professional developments, and we would talk about the experiences. So I'd ask people, let me hear your experience. Let me hear how you learned, who you learned from, why you learned it, all of these things. Most of those stories were very heartfelt. I haven't heard one in all the professional developments that I've ever done that left us all with a dry eye. Because those stories are stories about learning the language with people that we really love and care for. Grandmas, grandpas, uncles, aunties, cousins, brothers, sisters, moms, dads. We hear the language from those people, and we've learned them from these people. We start to embody things. Most of the time, people learned it doing things with their family, with their loved ones, through cultural events, community events. They started to do it in places that meant something to them. Their grandma's home, a ceremonial ground, in a kitchen, hunting, in a field. These places that people can remember what they were doing, the smells, the way things sounded, the things that surrounded them. And every single time I tell this story, I get goosebumps because it makes me remember places for me that mean exactly those same things. And so I always ask people after that, why not recreate those places when you're learning? Spaces for learning that mimic and are exactly the same as the way that you learned the language. Most of the language learned doesn't happen within four walls. Most of it doesn't. The way that most of us learn wasn't in a book, wasn't through flashcards, wasn't through a coloring book. Most of us have learned through action, through doing, through interaction, through relationships. And those are the things that are going to be those lasting memories for the people that you're going to give that gift of language to. They're going to remember those places and spaces. And remember, when you're doing this work, that those relationships are the most powerful piece, and those connections to the language are going to be the most powerful pieces that you can possibly give. Because even if they only learn a few words, you've just connected them to something deeper and to you. So I want to say thank you guys in advance for all the work that you're going to be doing, all the work that you've done. And I also want to be able to say thank you for the space and the place to be able to do this. And so for me, I feel very fortunate to be in the place that I'm in and to be able to do the work that I do, because I get to work with the people that are doing this fabulous work and with people in the programs like INA's that continue to do this work, that don't leave this behind. And it becomes something where at the end of the day, we always talk about sovereignty, self-determination, that we can make our own rules, we can do things for our tribes. The first place we should all be starting is reclaiming all the things that were once ours. And that's that language and culture. Because without that, all the things that we've lived by, those governance systems, those family systems, those belief systems, those knowledge systems, all those things don't mean a darn thing unless we have this connection back. So I just want to say thank you again. I can't say thank you enough. And so I didn't want to stand up here because I can talk all day. Anae's heard me talk, and she knows I'll just take over and let's go into the next activity. But I wanted to make sure that I gave all of you guys the time that you guys need to do whatever it is you want to do. And I just want to say thank you again. I can't say it enough. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that BIE has taken on this initiative, and I'm glad that INA's Indigenous Language Institute has been a great supporter even before this grant of native languages, but I think this opens the doors to a wider area. And so I thank you guys for everything that you're doing, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your next few days. And if there's any questions for me that you guys have, I'll be around here for the rest of the day and part of tomorrow. But I just want to say, especially from my family's side, that I've had a last couple of days, I lost an auntie over the weekend. And one of the things that they always told us was that, one of the things that always struck me when I was younger was that when you pass on to that next into that next place, when we go home, that if we don't have that language, that we're not going to be able to talk to the people on the other side. And it makes me emotional to know that you guys are giving that gift, to be able to allow not only our people to move forward, but also for them to connect to each other in that next life. So with that, I say thank you. A lot of the policies, procedures are very institutionalized and don't really incorporate these types of things like culture and language, even though that's our mission. It states very clearly in our mission statement that it's supposed to go towards cultural, holistic, tribally informed education for our students. But when you start to look at the policies and procedures that start to go towards that, we don't do that very well. We don't do that very well at all. And so one of the things that I did very early on was go and do site visits, because I wanted to see what was going on in our Bureau schools. So I have 22 different schools that I oversee in the Bureau operated network, but then I went to also go see tribal colleges and some of the tribally controlled schools, just to see what their programs are, what's the collaboration like, what are those programs. And what I saw was not what I expected. A lot of language programs are marginalized. And when I say marginalized, I mean not even just figuratively, but literally physically. A lot of our language program classrooms are at the very edge of our schools or in a portable somewhere or somewhere outside of the school. You start to see that, well, why don't you have, how many days a week are you guys teaching your students? We have 30 minutes a week with each class here and there. Well, and mostly it's to give our teachers a prep time. Those kinds of things came up. You start to ask the language teachers, how much professional development have you guys been given on classroom management, on writing lesson plans, those types of developing curriculum. You usually hear crickets when that one's, I get laughs because nobody's ever had those types of things happen. So going back to your question, one of the things is that I work primarily at bureau-operated schools, and I'm one guy. When I usually go and do my professional developments in different schools and in different places, people will ask me, where's your team? I'm like, here I am. And so part of this is changing and shifting the way that BIE thinks about this as a whole. And so for me, coming into this role, being having been a tribal official before, and having had that hat on, it gives me a very different lens from people that are, most of the people that are in BIE. My lens is always coming from that tribal community-based place, first and foremost, because that's what I see through, and what I like to happen in my community. And so part of this is that I'm just one person, but I think part of it is finding those places within BIE and people that are of like mind to be able to start that shift. And so part of this whole, even the grant that we're working under is a native language immersion grant. It doesn't mean that all of you guys for the next over 4 days are gonna all start up language immersion programs, but that you're working towards that. That's the ideal. And all of you guys, from an equity standpoint, are gonna be in different places and recognizing where you're at based upon your experiences, what you guys have done, the work that you've already done, and how do we start to move it forward, and what can we do to support that? So part of what I did in those site visits as part of this outcome is immersion grants like this, to start to put out there that we don't have enough resources, but also how do we start to build that sense of community, right, within our communities to change not only in BIE, but part of it is those ideological shifts, those mind shifts in our communities. Because a lot of times you guys get faced with those, well, I don't know why we're teaching it there. I don't like the way they're teaching it. I don't like who's teaching it. There's all these barriers that come up. You guys know them. But that's part of, even though we say that we're not assimilated, in a lot of ways we've become assimilated because we've become reliant on that education system that's institutionalized. That we have to do those, every school has to look the same. Are you guys all BIE network schools? No? Tribally controlled and bureau operated. You're not? Okay. So if you guys, all of these are BIE funded schools, we're still operating under those same policies and procedures, the monitoring, all of those types of things, funding sources, what have you. And so part of that is being able to engage that and look at where those places are. So one of the things is changing the way that we fund and the way that we're able to provide support towards our native language teachers. So treating them and giving them the same respect from an education standpoint, because you guys have knowledge bases that you can't learn anywhere else. Those are skilled, you can't learn them anywhere else. So giving them the value that they have. Those are some really key things that we're trying to work towards. The one that I can speak of that's really important right now that we've been doing is we, along with a team of mine, created a cultural competency framework. And we're rolling it out in different places throughout, and we're piloting it over different places this coming school year and a couple places this summer. And what it is we're trying to build capacity and understanding, and somebody, you mentioned administrators, that there's all levels from senior leadership in BIE to middle management in BIE to EPAs, those educational program administrators, those ERC people, those people that are in our schools, principals, teachers needs particular training, support staff need particular training, parents, community members, students, that we're engaging all of these places along this continuum, that all of us need to understand what these are, because I'm right along with you. Every single time I do a professional development, I ask, where are my administrators? And most of the time, you don't get any of them. And in order for these changes to be made, who needs to be a part of that? Administrators, school boards, people in those positions. And I actually just talked to some people, a school board member from Hopi that was out at Green Bay BIE Regional this past week, and we're gonna hopefully try and get some professional development rolling with them. And so, I'm not quite sure if I answered your question directly, but I think roundaboutly, it's a part of this is building capacity inside BIE. And I think there are shifts happening, and believe me, I've probably rattled a little more feathers than I probably should have, but I do it because I think that we need to move these things, and if I don't do it, and if people of like mind don't do it, then it's gonna remain stagnant, and we can't have that anymore. Yeah.
The reason why I asked the question or was concerned is because I'm 70 years old now, and this is my passion right now. And a lot of my Hopi tribal members that are here right now are paraprofessionals. And I know that their work is undermined quite a bit. And a lot of them don't want to get education degrees like I did because they don't want to be bound into teaching and substituting in a regular classroom. They want to be doing the work that they're hired for, which is teaching the language. Now, I have a real urgency for these people here. And that's why I'm saying, you know, we need some teeth to apply pressure to what's going on. I mean, I taught in a school with 236 students this year. It serves 3 communities, my home community, one of them. And when I left that place 30-some years ago, I was pretty competent that the language and the culture was not going to die in those communities. I go back and I work with these students. Not a single student can sit down with me and converse with me for 5 minutes in total Hopi. That's how badly our language is declining. And so it's a sense of urgency for me. And that's why I had to ask the question. Because if I no longer can do it, and there's not support for these younger people, where is the work going to end up?
And I just wanted to also say just real quick that so there's supposed to be within the BIE, there's supposed to be a language, culture, history specialist for Bureau operated, for tribally controlled, and Navajo. The other two positions have been vacant for quite a while. And so I've been having to do the work for 3 different people on a national level, which has been okay, which is always awesome. But the thing is, it's daunting to have one person do those things. And so one of the big pushes right now that I'm hoping that we can start to build from an appropriation standpoint, from a money standpoint, is starting to put pressure, and this is where that tribal governance piece comes into play, is that hoping that we can start to fund this and maybe create a Native language and history culture division or department that's going to be able to do some of this work and utilize outside collaborators, because a lot of this work has been in-house and reliant on in-house knowledge when a lot of this stuff has already been done. So why are we reinventing the wheel, but instead looking at some of especially because I'm one person, I can only do so many professional developments in the course of a year, but to be able to partner up with people like Indigenous Language Institute and Ine's group to be able to do this, and maybe even if there needs to be some other outsourcing, how can we provide that support? And those are places for right now that we're really trying to be able to push that envelope and to be able to provide that support. But just know that I am on your side, and I am very aware of all of the things that you brought up. And those are things that are ongoing conversations for me that are really key components in that cultural competency framework that I'm hoping that maybe we can go out to Hopi and be able to provide also. We only have a couple more minutes.
Hello, my name is Dawn Audubon. I'm from Riverside Indian School in Oklahoma. And I may sound like a hick because I'm highly assimilated, but I am all native. So my question is this. I work at a boarding school that has 81 different tribes. Now, this is my second year as ELL coordinator. So when I first got the position, it was strictly to make sure they can speak English. But what I realized after working with students, the more we encourage the native part to come out and be strong, then the English part is just another form of communication. Does that sort of make sense? And that's just through pure observation, because I have the same amount of paperwork you all do. I mean, those folders, and this has to be done by, so and so. But my question is this, or maybe you already have these resources. Do you have a library or someplace that I could draw from that I could Skype a conversation with a Sioux tribal member who speaks, or even sit down and have a meal on Skype with the Sioux or the Hopi native speakers, that we could sit and share that? Because as teenagers, because I work with 4th through 12th graders, teenagers, they want it to be about them. They don't want to know this means clothes, this means that. But if you had something where we could have a conversation about how to keep your room clean in that language, or this is how you dress, or this is how you prepare for ceremony, this is what you wear. Those kind of things that are pertinent to teenagers would be so helpful. Because right now, the native speakers are Choctaw, White Mountain Apache, my Sioux, and I would say Sioux because they're all different dialects in that Sioux language. My White Mountain Apaches, my San Carlos Apaches, my Zunis, all my Pueblos, they all speak a different language. And plus, I forgot about the Northwestern guys, and then the guys who live at the border up here near Canada, they all have their different languages. If that was available, I would appreciate that, because I saw in the brochure, it says, how do I say? That would help me out completely. But it'd have to be like an interaction with that native speaker, because kids, just like you said, I could give a whole workbook to a teenager and say, this is how you do, this is how you say, color the picture that looks like this. That's not going to be as much as if they have an interaction. And that's native. That's just native, because I grew up where Gila River Pima, when I heard it spoken, it was like commands, like do this, do that, get this, get that, over there, not there, over there, blah, blah, blah. And so that's how I learned the language. So now I can take direction from most people pretty quickly. My husband is Kiowa, and he speaks, their language is quick, but it's with actions. Like they'll say water, and they mean bring me water because I'm thirsty. You're supposed to know, I know what this means now, I get it. This means bring me something to eat, or blah, blah, blah. I mean, I get it. But those kind of things would be more helpful to me. And if you have those resources, please share them with me. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
So I know we're out of time, but I'm going to give a quick response. So 2 things. First one is that we're working on, and we have been working on, this issue with all of our off-reservation boarding schools, and looking at how we can create language opportunities for not only for Riverside, but Flandreau, Chamawa, Sherman. And so we want to be able to do that. And so part of it is going back, one of the first things we started doing was looking at, well, what tribes are represented and how can we reach out to those tribes to see what kind of opportunities are available. So of course, just like I said, every tribe, every one of those 81 tribes that you just described, all is at a different place with their language program. And so some of them are more prepared to provide distance learning opportunities, Skype opportunities, maybe through their tribal colleges. There are opportunities, and there are some of our tribes that don't have those developed yet. And so it's more about looking at reaching out to those individual tribes and seeing who they are. So one of the things that we've already done, some of the work on that behalf, has been able to look at what tribes have stuff that are developed. And so I can share that information with you, and that we can share, they can do remote. There might be opportunities that they can even get college credit. So like Tono Atam, through their tribal college, can offer language program to students remotely that they don't have to do it even during the school day. They can do it later on in the evening. And so those types of opportunities. The second thing is that with building those language programs in here, that's exactly what we're trying to be able to do, is recognize where we are all at in building these programs and how we're going to be able to do that and share that information. And so one of the things through the BIE strategic direction, it's a set of a bunch of different actions that we're doing right now, is that we've created a directory and an inventory. And so it's a huge, it's like 56 pages long with all kinds of different resources in there. But we're in the process of making that more user-friendly. So as the BIE is restructuring their website, we're hoping, what the hopes are with that is to be able to have a search engine that's going to be able to be utilized for all people that are looking at this. So let's just say you were a language teacher and you wanted to look at curriculum development and you live in Minnesota. So you'd be able to put in all of those criteria into that search engine and it'll pop up local resources. So let's just say you're in New Mexico, it'll pop up an A's program. And an A's program will be in there they might be able to help you with curriculum development. It might connect you to maybe, if you're in New Mexico, maybe UNM. Or maybe it might connect you with some of the other people that are doing some of this work. So it connects you to different places and spaces, but it's not only just on a national level, but it goes down from state level, region level, local level. And so it's going to be a work in progress, but that should be coming out I know it's not going to happen within the next couple of months, but at least within the next couple of years. So that we can start to, because they have to develop the software and all that kind of stuff, and that's what we're in negotiations with right now. All right. Thank you, guys.